Chapter 19. No! I screamed. He's got me. He's going to take my body. Would it hurt? I scrambled to my feet. Pete reached out to tag me, his fingers less than an inch from my arm. Hey, Pete, a familiar voice called. What are you going to do? Spend a whole year in a girl's body? Pete hesitated. He turned and peered into the woods. Lucas appeared between two trees, dancing around like a boxer. He laughed. A girl named Pete. That's a good one. We'll have fun all year teasing you about that. Pete stared at him, growling like an animal. Come and get me, Pete, Lucas taunted. Or should I say, Bettina. Lucas disappeared behind the trees. Do you have to pick on a girl, Pete? He yelled. Afraid you can't catch a guy? Pete tore after him. Go, Lucas, I screamed. You can do it. A boy in a green t-shirt cut in front of Pete, charging toward home base. Pete turned and lunged toward the boy. He missed. He spun around and headed back in the direction he had seen Lucas. I realized I hadn't tagged home. I threw myself at home base. I didn't just touch the tree, I hugged it. I was safe. Safe forever, or at least for a whole year. But what about Lucas? I stared around the woods, searching for him. I heard someone crashing through the bushes. Did Pete catch Lucas? Or had Lucas found a new place to hide? I can't believe how wrong I was, I thought, panting. Lucas wasn't Pete. It was David all along. And I asked him to help me spy on Lucas. Kids still darted through the woods. I clutched a tree, safe, listening to their shouts. Who was Pete chasing now? Sarah suddenly appeared, dashing for home. She slammed against a tree. You made it, I cried, hugging her. We're safe. She nodded, catching her breath. We hung around, waiting for the other kids to come in. Megan appeared, and then Carla and Chris. I watched for Lucas, but I didn't see him. A good sign, I thought. The longer he's out, the more likely it is he got away from Pete. That was fun, Chris exclaimed. It wasn't scary at all. Sure, Carla joked. You weren't scared. You only screamed every time I touched you. Well, you could have been Pete, Chris protested. Pete almost got me, I told him, but Lucas saved me. Lucas? Sarah sounded confused. But you say he was Pete. He wasn't, I explained. David was. No way, Megan shot back. You're making that up, Randy. I am not. David was Pete. He chased me, but Lucas saved me just in time. I'm sure David was just having fun with you, Megan insisted. He's not Pete. He is. Why wouldn't they believe me? Okay, Randy, we believe you. Sarah rolled her eyes, and the other girls giggled. Ask David, I demanded. He'll tell you. We glanced around, but there was no sign of David. You'll call him tonight and get him to go along with your story, Megan said. You'll see, I told them. Monday morning, David will come into school with gray hair or something. Then you'll believe me. I'll believe you got him to dye his hair somehow. That's what I'll believe, Carla teased. More kids sprinted out of the woods and tagged the tree. They milled around with their flashlights, talking and laughing. Mr. Cirque blew a whistle. Game over, he announced. Until this time next year. Everyone clapped and cheered. We were all so happy the game was over. Kids started to wander away in groups of twos and threes. Has anyone seen Lucas? I asked. I saw Lucas as I was running for home, Chris answered. Was he all right? I asked her. Chris shrugged. He looked fine to me. He probably tagged home while we were talking and then left, Sarah suggested. Good, I thought. Lucas is okay. Maybe Pete couldn't catch anyone this year. I've got to apologize to Lucas, I decided, and thank him, and explain why I avoided him all this time. More kids headed out of the woods. People waved their flashlights. See you next year, Pete. I said goodbye to Sarah and Chris and Carla. I walked home alone. It had been a terrifying night, but it's over now, I thought. Everyone, excuse me, even alone in the dark, I don't feel afraid. I don't feel afraid of anything anymore. I felt so happy. No more Pete. On Monday morning, I strolled through the crowded halls, keeping an eye out for Lucas. I didn't find him, so I went to class. I hope you and David got your story straight, Megan teased. He'll back me up, I insisted. You'll see. But David never showed up. The first bell rang and Miss Hartman closed the door. David's seat was empty. Where was he? A boy whispered something to Megan. She passed it along to me. Somebody heard David had to go to the hospital, she whispered. Do you think? I nodded. Poor David. Sarah and I passed the baseball field after school that day. Shadyside was playing Hartsdale. I hadn't seen Lucas all day. I couldn't wait to talk to him. We settled in the bleachers to watch. Lucas stood on the pitcher's mound. He whizzed the ball past the Hartsdale batter. Chris said that she heard David's okay, Sarah told me. He's supposed to get out of the hospital tomorrow. What's wrong with him? I asked. I don't know. Some kind of virus or something. I'm telling you, he was Pete. That's what made him sick. Okay. Strike 3! Lucas struck out the first batter. Sarah and I clapped. What are you going to say to Lucas? Sarah asked as we watched the game. I'm not sure, I replied. I guess I'll explain that it was a misunderstanding. It sounds kind of silly now. Shadyside beat Hartsdale 5-3. I hung around, waiting for Lucas to come off the field. Sarah nudged me. I guess you want to thank him by yourself. Call me and let me know what happens. Okay, I agreed. She gave me a playful little wave and dashed off. Lucas ambled off the field. He carried his bat over one shoulder. His baseball mitt hung off the end of it. Hi, I said. Hi, he said back. He smiled. That was some game of hide and seek the other night, wasn't it? Yeah, I agreed. We began to walk toward home. Are you all right? He asked. You didn't get hurt or anything, did you? I'm fine, I answered. How about you? Are you okay? Great, he grinned. He took off his baseball cap and pushed a lock of curly dark hair off his forehead. He's really cute, I thought. Why hadn't I noticed that before? I took a deep breath. Apology time. Lucas, I can't believe what you did for me. Pete would have gotten me for sure if it weren't for you. No big deal. He put his cap back on, shrugging. It's a big deal to me, especially since, well, I guess I haven't been very nice to you. You kept running away from me, he said. I did kind of notice that. Well, I can explain, I stammered. See, I paused. It seems so stupid now I'm embarrassed to say it. We crossed the street. He looked at me, waiting to hear what I had to say. His expression was so friendly I decided to go for it. I thought you were Pete. Lucas laughed. You thought I was Pete? Why? This part was embarrassing too. Should I admit that David and I had spied on him? No, I decided. I may like to get all the facts, but that doesn't mean I have to like to give them all. Well, I began. One night I happened to be passing by, and I saw you in the cemetery. You were digging worms, and I thought Pete was looking for food. Now Lucas laughed really hard. So, I went on, what were you doing? I was digging worms. Night crawlers. But not to eat, to use for fishing bait. Oh! I laughed with relief. Fishing? Why didn't I think of that? Then I remembered another strange thing. Can I ask you something else? I began. Did you come to my house one night and look through the window? I was sure I saw you. He laughed again. I did. I was passing your house on my way home from digging night crawlers, and I heard this terrible screaming. Screaming? Oh, yes, of course. Baby. And I thought maybe you were in trouble. I saw a light on and ran to the window to make sure you were all right. Then my parents came home, I finished for him. And what happened to you? I felt weird about peeking through your window, so I ran away. We turned onto Fear Street, both laughing. The sky instantly darkened. I noticed that it happened a lot on Fear Street. I paused for breath. Lucas kept laughing. He laughed harder and harder. His laughter began to sound weird to me. Not so jolly and happy, more raspy and harsh, as if he had a cold or something. I glanced at him. His face looked strange, distorted. His mouth twisted into a crooked grin. Or was it a scowl? The trees are throwing shadows on us, I thought. That's why he looks creepy. He squinted at me, his eyes glittering. You know, he rasped, Pete really wanted you. My heart began to pound. There was no reason to be afraid of Lucas now, I ordered myself. You got away from him. Lucas's voice sounded angry. That wasn't supposed to happen. What? I didn't understand. Then I smelled something bad. Rotten. The same rotten odor I smelled in the woods. I stared at Lucas. His face twisted horribly now. His mouth pulled into a tortured grimace. His eyes bulged and crossed. The skin on his cheeks tightened over the bones. He opened his grotesque mouth to speak. His rotten breath blasted into my face. It wasn't fair, he yelled. I really wanted you. He grabbed me. No, I screamed. Pete!